Hello, and you are listening to EcoJustice Radio, a project of SoCal 350 Climate Action. Our show presents environmental and climate stories from a social justice frame, featuring voices not necessarily heard on mainstream media. EcoJustice Radio acknowledges that we record the show on the traditional territory of the Tongva and all of their relatives. Welcome. I am Jessica Aldridge. On today's show, Poetry and Politics, City on the Second Floor, I will be interviewing Matt Sedillo, poet and writer in residence at Laureate. Matt Sedillo, author of Mowing Leaves of Grass and City on the Second Floor, has been described as the best political poet in America and the poet laureate of struggle by famed historians and academics. He has appeared on C-SPAN and in the Los Angeles Times. He is also a returning guest of EcoJustice Radio. Check out episode 105, where he and fellow poet Awa Njai discuss spoken word, challenging mainstream discourse on climate. Our guest today, Matt Sedillo, has been described in Roar magazine as one of the most important working-class intellectuals of our time. Today, Matt will be discussing his latest book, City on the Second Floor, published by Flower Song Press. Author Paul Ortiz wrote, Matt Sedillo's poetic work is full of history, struggle, tragedy, anger, joy, despair, possibility, and faith in the struggles of working-class people to overcome the forces of capitalism and racism. Cambridge professor Thomas Jeffrey Miley called his poetry electric, like a lightning bolt, and sees the work as a foray into sociology, into Marxist geography, as Sedillo roams the streets of Los Angeles, reporting what he sees and relaying what he knows. Famed journalist Greg Palast summed it up. Sedillo is vengeance, the one we've been waiting for. Thank you for tuning in to EcoJustice Radio and our show, Poetry and Politics, City on the Second Floor. I am your host, Jessica Aldridge, and it is my honor to welcome our guest, Matt Sedillo, author of Mowing Leaves of Grass and City on the Second Floor, and writer in residence at Laureate. Welcome to EcoJustice Radio.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited too. This is the second time we've had you on the show. You've been involved with SoCal 350 since our inception, actually, before we were even SoCal 350. And at that point, we were doing a march and you shared your poetry with us, which happens to be in your new book, City on the Second Floor. That piece of poetry is in the book. You've been described as the best political poet alive. What inspired you to embark upon your artistic and political journey?
Okay, so when I was a kid, I wanted to be a writer, right? And then like things happened, and you know, fast forward, that didn't quite work out. But before that, I wanted to be president of the United States because I understood, even as a little child, that I needed to get a job when I grew up, and I wanted the job where I'd be in charge of the most things. And then my father told me, you know, you can't be president because we're Mexican. And I was like, what? No, you don't understand. Like, I'm going to do this. And you know, as time went on, it really didn't make as much sense. So I was like, I'm going to be a writer and I'm going to make art for art's sake. And I thought that, I'm like 12 saying this kind of stuff. It was ridiculous. But like, that was my idea. And I wanted to write a novel and all this kind of stuff like that. But then, you know, things happen and work. And then I had to work, right? And then all of a sudden, you know, bad things happen, you know, winds and tides of the economy. And I got myself in a lot of bad situations. But then I was like, okay, I kind of recovered myself. I was going to the library more. I was reading all these books about political economy. And like, I'm going to put away my dreams of being a bourgeois artist. I will now be a serious organizer. And they may not like me, but they're going to respect me. And I had this ridiculous attitude. I read somewhere that you have to work harder than everybody to show that you know how to do the job, so they'll respect you, and then you can organize them. Absolutely not true. I worked so hard, and everyone hated me because it just looked like I was kissing up to the bosses and making everyone demand more of them. And so like that plan did not work. I don't know who thought that was a good idea, but that didn't work. But then I came back home and I saw a friend of mine David Romero, was also a poet. He took me to an open mic. And when we went to this open mic, I saw these people doing this like kind of political type poetry, and I heard it. And just like when you hear a voice on the radio and you can imitate, I knew I could imitate what the guy was doing. So I was like, I can come back here and I'm with this, and they may not like me, but they're going to respect me, which was also a bad attitude. But anyways, that's how that happened. And then now I have the life I have. So this kid that wanted to be an artist and this kid that wanted to be involved in politics has merged into one person, and that's who I am now.
And your upbringing, you were raised in the suburb of East Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. How has that shaped your poetry?
Well, growing up in El Sereno, it was a very beautiful thing It's a very wonderful, great neighborhood, very vibrant. The whole east side, El Sereno, City Terrace, Boyle Heights, Lincoln Heights, and East LA, obviously. So, just growing up in that area, just being part of that kind of culture. It's an interesting thing because on the one hand, yeah, it's a very Mexican neighborhood, and that's kind of known. But it's also a part of the world that a lot of people know about. Like that area is a place that a lot of people know about. And it's not the only place where the population lives. I mean, there's places in, all throughout the San Gabriel Valley, all throughout the Inland Empire, all throughout the San Fernando Valley, where you have these very similar neighborhoods, but doesn't have that same kind of eye on it the way that kind of part is, and that's something that that's changing, and we want to facilitate the change of that. But of course, growing up on the east side of LA is just that's profoundly shaped me, and just to be part of that whole history and that whole thing. My mom was at the walkouts in '68. I think she might have not walked out because she was confused by the walkouts. She went to the Chicano moratorium in 1970, but she was on double date and left early. So my mom was kind of like the Forrest Gump of the movement. She was there, but it's kind of what's going on? But very sweet woman, but be part of that whole thing and have family lineage. Organic to that, not just some idea about that. So it's always profoundly shaped me.
And you recently released your second book of poetry. It's called City on the Second Floor. What is meant by the city on the second floor? Well,
city on the second floor is supposed to be it's a general metaphor for people, how they view themselves and how they view themselves as separate and apart from the kind of the street, the devastating effects of having your life just completely just gone, right? And you're trying to strive for this thing that you can't reach, which is a penthouse suite. So that's what city on the second floor means. But city on the second floor literally comes from the Hotel Bonaventure in downtown LA, where there are bridges that connect all these office buildings so that people can go into the Bonaventure. And then they can go to Kinko's, and they can go to Starbucks, and they can go, go to this office building over here. They can conduct all their meetings without ever having to walk on the street. And to me, it's just so stark, and it's so whatever. It's a real thing. It's a metaphor, but it's also really exists in LA. And LA is one of the cruelest cities in terms of the disparity of wealth and poverty. I mean, just go to downtown LA and see banks, literally banks that stretch into the sky. The Bank of America building, the tallest buildings in LA are banks, the Bank of America building. Sure, I'm just blanking right now, but that stretch into the sky, and then all of a sudden you're in Skid Row.
Yeah.
And so homeless encampments. So that's the wealth disparity in Los Angeles. It's starker than I've ever seen anywhere else. I mean, even in New York, it's starker than New York, starker than what I saw in Mexico City. I mean, it's really, really stark in Los Angeles because it's really just like blocks and that you're from here to there.
And the overall premise of your book, the poems that are in City on the Second Floor, what's the overall premise?
Well, the overall premise, there's a couple running themes, right? But basically, if I really break it down, there's really two major themes, right? There's the fact that the city is built against people. The way that things are physically laid out is built against the people that live in them, and that you're trying to strive, you're trying to work, you're paranoid that the bottom's going to fall out, and maybe the bottom will fall out, maybe it will, or maybe you're going to spend your whole life in that precarious situation just trying to prevent the bottom to fall out. That's one theme. And then the other running theme is, and also these cities are going to destroy the world or destroy life on the planet. This industrial way of life is the undercurrent. So the industrial way of life is unfair because there are owners and workers, and because there are people that are exploiters and exploited, and all these things, all these dynamics that exist between human beings, right? Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, all this gas, all this drilling, all this, drilling and pumping into the ocean, all this attempts to colonize the moon is actually killing all of us and killing life for everything else on the planet. And that's kind of like this undercurrent. It's kind of like the subplot that eventually overtakes the book.
I want to jump into one of these poems. Can you share LA is full of pigs?
Los Angeles falling apart. In the streets. In the suburbs. In the wind. In a barely kept Hollywood bathroom, wheezing, vomiting, coughing up blood. These past few days, these past few years, I have spread myself across this sprawl, and now fear this drive may kill me, may kill us all. And I wander over the General Hospital, between whose walls desperation wears in high concentration. Upon the faces the shop-worn and prematurely ill alike, As they wait upon the news of illness they cannot afford to have, survival without insurance may take a while. Los Angeles is full of untold misery. A homeless man sleeps next to me, and I could smell the years of hard distance between who he is now and who he may have been. And all that stands between him and the bitter wind is chance. Is the kindness of a night nurse who will let him sleep in peace. Los Angeles is full of good people who from time to time can turn a blind eye to killer policy, and I wonder how I'm going to bounce checks, free clinics, carry cash, and leave the account in the negative stand between me and him. Me and the bitter wind, and if so, where would I go? From Venice to San Francisco is our war on the homeless, a war on the dispossessed. They got fewer and fewer options. There are shelters for women and children, all inadequate. For me, just man up, homeboy. It's that concrete pillow, cardboard blanket, and freeze yourself to death. Yes, the city will leave you to die on the same stretch of sidewalk where banks stretch into the sky. And I wonder, as even now Skid Row is being gentrified, as a city, as a system, as the pigs push people past poverty, past hunger, past homelessness, the very edge of existence on Skid Row, where all so-called complexities of an economy are laid bare, where the rich are literally stacked upon the poor. Los Angeles is full of grotesque absurdity, especially on Skid Row. It's millions annually policing the misery of people with nowhere to go because your pockets are empty and you ain't got nothing, and change is just not coming. Well, there's no real difference between a booming metropolis and a barren desert, and the world of money passes by you, passes through you, as though you were part of the scenery, protected in the knowledge they are serviced by pigs who speak the language of violence, the language of the nightstick, the language of untold misery that will beat you for begging, beat you for sleeping, beat you for breathing, beat you for doing whatever it is you need to do to survive the night in the bitter wind. Los Angeles. I said Los Angeles. It's full of pigs.
Thank you. Going back to this concept of spatial relations that you were talking about in your book and how our environment is built for exploitation, how do you see the role of everyday people versus those that are in a position of power and elevated privilege?
Well, I mean, I see them as getting exploited. I see the cities are built to exploit people or exclude them. So the whole point is that, like, you know, as working people, right, we're either being exploited or being excluded from things, right? And that's what we look at the physical landscape of everything, every way we interact with each other. I mean, you walk somewhere and you're hungry, right? Let's say you're walking around, you're hungry, and you want to go to this thing, and you don't have any money, you don't have whatever, but you have like a guitar, right? And so your rational idea is that you're going to sit outside, you're going to play music, try and entertain people, and then give you some money so you go and buy an omelet or something or whatever, some cup of coffee. That's your rational whatever. Now, if a bear were to come here, the bear would just, like, you know, go in the kitchen and start eating. That's actually much more rational. Our whole thing is just completely an irrational way of operating. We have a completely irrational way of operating, but we think that's normal, right? So like that's the kind of that. So everything we do is either we're being exploited or we're being excluded. We're being exploited or we're being excluded in a world of plenty, in a world where there is so much abundance. There's so many things that could be shared. There's so many things that could happen, and all those things are built from our collaborative effort, and yet they're privately owned. They're privately owned in a way that takes from us, that makes us unable to get a hold of it. So that's the way the cities are set up. That's the way the world is set up. But the world, when I say the world, it's really the physical space where human beings live. Yeah.
In your poem, LA is Full of Pigs, you reference Skid Row, gentrification, a police state targeting those with nowhere to go. Skid Row in Los Angeles is globally well known. It's referenced in movies and songs, but there are Skid Rows throughout metropolis areas in the United States. What are your thoughts about what is taking place in our collective Skid Rows, and has it become, because there is gentrification happening as well, and has it become illegal for some people to even exist in certain areas of our major cities?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. Absolutely. There's, you know, I travel around a lot, so I see increasingly all these cities, all these Skid Rows popping up all over the place. And increasingly in just different pockets of LA, you're seeing more and more tent cities just popping up alongside the side of the freeway, out into the San Gabriel Valley, out into the San Fernando Valley, you know, in the Inland Empire, again, in Orange County. You see a lot of this. So I mean, this is just increasing everywhere in our general region, and throughout the country, it's increasing. I mean, like I said that LA is one of the most grotesque things, but I remember last time I was just in Vegas, I saw outside a casino, a tent city underneath the freeway that you could see from the parking lot. So you look in the parking lot, you look in one direction, you see this casino. You look in the other direction, a tent city. And it's horrible.
And then this idea that it becomes illegal for people to exist that way too, because people are forced into that existence. But now, here in Los Angeles, throughout the United States, what's this concept of it being illegal to be homeless?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, like you look at some of the things that Garcetti has been implementing.
Our mayor of Los Angeles.
The mayor of Los Angeles it's an outright war. It's even worse than what Yorgos. I mean, they did these things, and he came in I'm going to help, but he's coming with these, his solutions are worse. I mean, the crackdown is increasing and increasing and increasing and increasing, and it's global. It's not just here.
They sweep these homeless encampments in tent cities.
Right. I remember when Google and everyone, all the tech companies were getting ready to take over San Francisco. Right before it actually happened, I have a lot of friends up there who organize, many of them poets who organize much of the resistance against this, and they were telling these horrible stories of how the police would come in and they would throw bleach on the streets.
Oh, Jesus!
To prevent people from sleeping there because it would be toxic. And so that was the kind of things that they were doing. That's the kind of things they were doing, and that's the kind of increasingly, in order to make a place look chic, in order to make a place look like it's going to be developed, in order to make a place look like this is somewhere where that's welcoming to capital, these things have to be suited. I mean, look at the Olympics. I mean, everywhere it goes. It goes out driving people out of the street, driving people from their homes. It goes around in Greece they were killing dogs. I mean, This is just a horrific thing that it's global. It's not just LA.
So before we go to the break, I want you to share another poem.
Sure.
The name of the book, City on the Second Floor, which plays into these themes.
Right. So here's a poem, the book's namesake, City on the Second Floor, which again is named after some building structures in downtown Los Angeles. There is a city on the second floor. International destination whose entrance is prohibited to all those appearing too poor for travel. Where commerce crosses bridges of wire and concrete just above streetlight rises an economy of scale. Where buildings and offices connect to disconnect from the world below. Here, in the space between worker and destination, conversation spins profit. And no one moves without reason. And no one speaks without purpose. Here, the word is stillborn a commodity. And the world dies anew. While working stiff, spend wages in cheap imitation of their own exploitation, arrogant, delusional, walking dead, laughingly dreaming of a penthouse suite they will never reach, while staring down from terraces towards the street below.
Thank you. We're going to go to break and we'll be right back. Hey listeners, quick break here. We hope that you're enjoying EcoJustice Radio. Stay connected by subscribing to EcoJustice Radio on all major podcast apps and visit our website, ecojusticeradio.org, to check out previous shows and guests and get connected with us on social media. Today you are listening to Poetry and Politics, City on the Second Floor, with host Jessica Aldridge and guest Matt Sedillo, author of Mowing Leaves of Grass and City on the Second Floor and writer-in-residence at Rearte, whose work can also be found at mattsedillo.com. Matt, thank you for sharing your poetry with us, and we're going to get into a few more of those as the show goes on. I want to talk about poetry and art and the way that it is so incredibly important in activism. So art energizes the spirit in a different way than that of demonstrations or marches or other group-oriented actions or campaigns. What is the role of spoken word poetry in activism and activating change? Yeah,
I mean, I could give you the really inspiring answer, which is it stirs the soul and it makes the heart move and it does all these things, right? And that's all true. That's all true, and that's true. It activates a different part of the brain. It activates a part of the brain that that tells you that you need to do something, right? When you're really touched by something, when you're really inspired by something. Just think about in your own personal life when you have these conversations, right, that are not necessarily very tactile, not necessarily very utilitarian, but they change the entire way you look at things, right? And those are just conversations you have with people. Well, art has the same kind of function as those really meaningful, deep conversations, right? So that's an inspiring way of saying it. But I think on top of, saying these inspiring things, we also have to have these very practical kind of conversations. Now, if that's true, that art does that art engages a different part of the listener's mind, right? If that's true, then that means we have to make art very central to the things that we do. Mm-hmm. And people like to say things, well, the most important things are the poets, or the most important things is the art, the most important things. But they say that. And I don't even know if I believe that necessarily true. But they say that, and then they act as though the exact opposite is true. Mm-hmm. That art is just kind of like a condiment. It's just like it's ketchup on the, it's mustard on the meal. The fact of the matter is, you have to treat it just as important as the expert speaker, as the organizer who's going to make sure all the chairs are there, as where it is as equal. It should be an equal component to all these things, and all these things deserve their respect. The organizer deserves the respect. The expert speaker who took all this time to learn these things and learn the, all the ins and outs of the specific topic, so that an audience will come and learn something they didn't know before they got there. That deserves its respect. And the artist who has taken the time to learn a form of communication that engages people at a higher level and a deeper level and a more visceral level that makes them want to really go out and do something, not just feel like they learned something, but go and do something about it. That has to be treated with an equal amount of respect when we put these things together, when we put these events together, when we put these marches together, when we put these calls to action together. Art has to be treated that way, and it really isn't. People talk about it like they talk about it in these glowing terms, but that's like someone complimenting you, and that's like it's like having a boss that compliments you, but that never gives you a raise. It's like that, or they compliment you and they don't even pay you. They're just stealing your wages, right? That's kind of.
I mean, artists get that all the time, right?
Of course, exposure, this, that, the other. But I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about the actual effectiveness of the event.
Yeah.
The event will be more effective if art is made as an essential component of the event. It'll be more effective for everyone.
Politics is it's hard for a lot of people to digest and understand, especially when there's so much misinformation and confusing information out there and people's opinions. What does it mean for you to be a political poet?
So for me to be a political poet is because, on the one hand, it's an interesting question, because on the one hand, I could take it two different ways. I could take it like, what does it mean for me, or what does it mean, like, what am I trying to do in the world? So I think that those are two separate questions, and they're both worth answering. So I'll try to be brief in answering both of them. For me to be a political poet is for me to do all those things I was just talking about right now. Is to try and engage in the fight. So, like, what does it mean for me to be a political poet? Is it the same thing as what does it mean for you to host EcoJustice? What does it mean for the team to be a part of EcoJustice, the whole team behind you, to be part of this radio program, right? It's because we're trying to do something. It's because we're taking our talents and our skills and these things we've developed over years and bringing them to a struggle. Right? So for me to be a political poet means I care about the fact that there are all kinds of, abuses that go on in these cities, and I care that people can end up sleeping in the streets while people are sleeping on yachts, $500 million yachts, and people are launching cars into space. And meanwhile, bombs are getting dropped all over the world, and people are dying in the streets, and there's people are going hungry. And in that same world, that bothers me, right? So what I'm really good at is writing poetry. So I will throw myself at that. That's what that means, right? So, but then for myself, what does it mean? So I really don't like it when people pretend like they're this 100% saintly servant to the people, blah, 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 because then they end up lying to themselves. And then when you lie to yourself, you start lying to other people. And then you become the most obnoxious, horrible, just pretending like, long suffering, whatever. So you got to really look at something, and also, what do you want for yourself? And so for myself, I do want a historical legacy as being one of these like quintessential political poets, and really go down as like one of the best to ever do it. And I think that, my work has, in the media I have gotten, drawn a lot of comparisons to Amiri Baraka, to Roque Dalton, to Bertolt Brecht, to Andre Lorde, to Jose Montoya, to all these people who write nothing alike. Like, their writings are so different. The only thing they have in common is that they all wrote to fight. They all wrote to fight the good fight, right? And so the fact that people are saying things about me in that vein, what does that mean to me? That means the fulfillment of my life's ambition. I mean, that or the pursuit of my life's ambition, not fulfilled, but the pursuit of my life's ambition. That's how I answer both those.
And just for people who are listening and wondering right now, where can people get your books?
Well, soon they can go to flowersongpress.com, and the website we fixed. We're under construction because the press I'm with, we're doing so much right now. It's so overwhelming. I think 2 years ago we published like 17 people. Last year we published 25. So I mean, like this year it's on pace to do the same. So the press is growing really fast. So like the website is still getting updated. So that's rare. But you can get it on Amazon, but don't do that. You can get it directly from me. If you don't know me and you can't get a hold of me, I'm on Facebook. You can inbox me.
What about mattsedillo.com?
Go to mattsedillo.com. Okay. There you go. Go to mattsedillo.com. Don't go to Amazon. Jeff Bezos doesn't need more money. Don't go to. It's on Walmart. The Waltons don't need more money. Barnes doesn't need more money. Noble doesn't need more money. Go to mattsedillo.com. I need more money. So you can email me directly from there.
Previous to the show, you informed me that colleges where the population is 25% or more Hispanic receive funding, but that money can be spent on anything. It doesn't actually have to be spent to serve Hispanics, which is the title of one of your books. I want you to share your poem, To Serve Hispanics, and explain how this ties into this college reference.
All right, so To Serve Hispanics is let me get to it. But To Serve Hispanics is a poem I wrote, and Hispanic serving institutions. I mean, people don't know this, but there's many of them stay in California because the state is the population has changed so significantly. So that could be like almost anywhere. But when that money comes into the college, they could spend it on dry cleaning for the mascot costume. They don't have to spend it on anything that would service the population supposedly going to help. So this is the poem, To Serve Hispanics. Reach for America, dream for America, teach for America, diversity, equity, inclusion, access, and achievement, USDA certified STEM, the Department of Defense, the great state of California, serving as one great big Hispanic serving institution. Just imagine the federal funding, the brochures of underserved, the spreadsheets of human misery, the proclamations, administrations, boards of trustees debating safe spaces for students to sleep in, parking lots, perchance to dream of a way of life that died decades before they were born. Debt is the final frontier. And these kids, they're America's future.
Thank you. Another poem of yours, I feel your poem Post speaks to living in an exploitative economy and being to blame for what's going on. Yeah. I'd love it if you could share your poem Post and give some background on that meaning as well.
Two last points about his To Serve Hispanics. I generally don't use the word Hispanic, and also To Serve Hispanic also comes because there's a lot of people who get mad at me about this. Hispanic, why didn't you say something that's a bad word? Yeah, it's a bad word. Okay, but anyways, also To Serve Hispanics comes from it's a Twilight Zone reference to serve man, and at the end, To Serve Man is a cookbook. So that's
at the Twilight Zone.
The Twilight Zone, yeah. It's aliens come, and they're helping out. And it's to serve man, which is to eat them. Anyways, here we go. This is Post. It seems like just yesterday, municipalities raised cities, built nuclear families, associations of sturdy pockets, a 2-car garage, a chicken in every pot, a military expansion, a man on the moon, and a finger on the button. Tomorrow doesn't show up all at once, but when it does, liquidate the pension. Automate the factory. Auction off the options. Don't worry about me. I worry free. Freelance contingency. Smiling at your service to gig economy. Side hustle. Millennial. Post-industrial standard. Hire me as an adjunct. Fire me as contingent into city I cannot afford to live in. Tell me my credit score. Better yet, tell me yours. Promise me the world and show me the door. I was not born angry. I was abandoned. I'm your velveteen rabbit. The drying paint of Saturn eating his children. Neoliberalism feasting on the marrow of the past and the present, the jobs of tomorrow gone today, born sometime after the foreclosure. Tell me another for the fire. Tell me the one where I killed the economy.
Very nice. Thank you. Recently, you got a gig to go into the prison system and host writing workshops. Tell us about this. What is this? And why is this so incredibly important?
So for me, I'm working with ACTA, which is the Alliance for California Traditional Arts. And I was invited in by Quetzal Flores of the famed band Quetzal, Grammy Award-winning Quetzal. And he brought me in, and it was at the recommendation of Luis Rodriguez, who is stepping down from that position, former poet laureate, author of Always Running, et cetera, the great living legend. Luis Rodriguez stepping down, and he actually recommended me to take his place as the workshop leader. So that's just a huge honor for me as there. So why is it important to lead writing workshops in the prisons? Well, I think it's important because, it's important to really put a human face on people who are behind bars. I mean, it's really an important face. And none of this can be talked about in the context that it's so easy to end up in jail these days. It's much easier to end up in jail these days than it has been in previous times. I mean, they'll find all kinds of reasons to lock people up. Now, maybe some people did something really horrible, and maybe that's true. But it's also true that, you're dealing with a lot of people that are in there for non-violent drug offenses, and so that's kind of the reality of the prison system. So it's really important to put a human face on what's going on there. It's also important to treat people with respect. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to teach them the same workshop that I do in high schools, the same workshop I do in public libraries, the same workshop I've done at in the Claremont colleges, the same one I did at Occidental, the same one I did at UCLA, the same one I did at the University of Cambridge. I'm going to give them the exact same thing because I never change it up. It's always the same thing, always the same basic 3-act structure, always the showing of how to make things more dynamic and how to create your communication system, create a communication system that's unique to you, but also very dynamic. And it's the same thing I teach everybody. So I'm going to teach them that, and hopefully when they get out, hopefully while they're there, they have a better, it helps them better express their feelings, helps them get whatever it is they're feeling off their chest. But hopefully when they get out, they'll be able to connect to things like Project Rebound or what's called Underground Scholars, or all these different things that connect you to the colleges, but also could put them on on a speaking tour, a speaker bureau type thing, because they'll be able to have this skill and they'll be able to express this thing that people want to hear about and have practical applications. They get honorariums from colleges and honorariums to speak places. Hopefully I can impart them with tools that when they leave, they can use them, and their story of having been in prison and the fact that they can do this, they can express it so beautifully through poetry, actually can have some material benefit in their life. That's my hope.
In your book of poetry, City on the Second Floor, which we've been talking about this whole show, you have a few poems that focus on the environment with differing points of interest. The poem Sky seems to focus on the claiming of land and colonization, while the poem Sea takes it further and speaks to the destruction of our quality of life. And so I want to dive into these two poems. If you could share Sky and then speak to its meaning and why you wrote it, and then also share Sea and take the same approach.
Yeah. All right, this guy. To a beautiful brown mobile proletariat native to the continent, displaced by imperial capital that lays claim to the clay, claim to the soil, claim to all that stands upon it, to all that grows out of it, crossing rivers and canyons, defying textbook explanation, the flight of the monarch butterfly represents freedom, represents movement. Guided by ancestral knowledge along a path set generations before them. And isn't that just like butterflies? Imperialists, industrialists, men of arms, made up of war, lay claim to the sky. Declare no-fly zones. Make cults of drones. Declare war without cost. Drop bombs, phosphorus gas, depleted uranium, napalm. Last I heard, they were building a space force while praying to the sky for the money and strength to colonize the heavens. So the sky, when we think about colonialism, we think about people stealing, land. We think of war. We think of territory, physical territory, and the grabbing of territory. But in our time of air warfare, people declare no-fly zones. They basically that's a form of invading other countries. Like, oh, you can't fly over your country. We'll shoot you down because we have a bigger army. The sky was really about that. The sky was really about that in a period of time when they were going to create a space force. And this is because this is the thing about, like, everyone's glad that Trump's not president, but I don't see Biden dismantling Space Force. I don't see a reduction in ICE. I don't see any horrible or wild-eyed thing that Trump did. I don't see Biden reversing any of it. So these things, and this is what happens. I mean, the same thing will happen with Bush. Like Bush brought in all these terrible things, and then Obama just institutionalized them. And so Trump brought in these things that seem just totally just insane, but they're not going anywhere. They become these permanent things, and that's the way the Republicans and Democrats operate. The Republicans do something that we're all like, oh my God, I can't believe this, and then the Democrats come in and they soften the edges and they smooth the talking points, and then it just escalates. Yeah, it continues that way.
What about just taking it a little further on this, Space Force, going further into space. I mean, it seems like in recent times there's, this idea of colonizing space.
Colonizing space, yeah. I mean, like, and not that privatizing the colonization of space. Mm-hmm. Like, the fact that this has become a space race between, not between nations, but between corporations, between Amazon and Tesla, and then I guess Richard Branson's involved as well. And so there's this kind of space race between Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, and that kind of defines. It sounds ridiculous, but that is actually what is defining our time and era: a space
really
race between these two people. So
it is, and
they're supervillains.
They talk like the epitome. And other people, too, I don't think realize, too, within the space race, there's so much waste that is created, and we literally shoot it off into the rest of into the universe.
Yeah, and we still don't know what we're doing in the sea is. I mean, all the trash we're throwing in the oceans, we have no idea what that's going to do.
And now we're throwing it into
space. We have even less of an idea what that's going to do.
Oh, gosh. Okay, C. The poem C.
The C. Okay. So, again, all right. Whatever it is we are doing, it is only making the storm stronger. There is land underwater, and there too we drill. Capitalists dream of bottomless pits, then pits to bed plastic. All life began in the ocean, and there too we kill. There are mountains underwater. Cities too, I imagine. Arrogant and delusional. One day, the sea will swallow us whole.
I love that poem. It's depressing, but I love that poem. Well, what about what inspired you for that?
Well, so the placement of the sea is at the end of the book, so that's really important because this whole book is about it's class conflict. Those books mostly just boil it down real simply. It's class conflict, but then there's this undercurrent. It's undercurrent that like this industrial way of life is destroying the possibility of life on the planet. So even if you had like a socialist way of organizing things, even if you had a way where you limited worker exploitation, you eliminated all these kinds of things, you'd be in position to address these questions, but that alone would not address these questions. It would still pump gas into the air. It would still do all these things that are just destroying the earth. Or not even destroying the earth. The earth's fine. I mean, it's destroying. I mean, it's affecting the earth, but it's destroying our ability to live here is what it's doing. And so, and we just keep doing it. And that is tied to capitalism, though, because that is tied to it's not just the technologies. It's like under capitalism, everything's a commodity. Everything is built for its sale. So this phone isn't built for me to use it. The laptop's not built for you to use it. The pen's not built for you to use it. The pen is built to make money. GM doesn't make. They don't make cars. They make money. Dell doesn't make computers. They make money. So that's what these things all do. And when we produce and produce and produce and produce and produce to make money, as opposed to like we produce this because this is how many diapers we're going to need for the year. This is how many shoes we'll need for the people that live here for the year. When we produce to make money, we're going to have a bunch of things left over and a bunch of trash. And that's what capitalism produces. Capitalism produces literally trash. Capitalism, my friends, is trash.
Thank you. We're going to take a break real quick, come back with a bunch more poems and more conversation with Matt Sedillo. Hold tight. Hey listeners, quick break here. We hope that you're enjoying EcoJustice Radio. Stay connected by subscribing to EcoJustice Radio on all major podcast apps and visit our website, ecojusticeradio.org, to check out previous shows and guests and get connected with us on social media. Today, you are listening to Poetry and Politics, City on the Second Floor, with host Jessica Aldridge and guest Matt Sedillo, author of Mowing Leaves of Grass and City on the Second Floor and writer-in-residence at Rearte, whose work can also be found at mattsedillo.com. So before the break, we were talking about some of the environmental themes that run through your book, and you read to us the poem Sky, Sea. There's a few more poems that have that strong environmental theme. There's one that's called Everything in Between, and that's a personal favorite of mine. Yeah. And to me, it seems to call out the distraction in our everyday lives and the exploitation issues that will eventually lead to our demise. Do you mind reading this poem and then sharing your thoughts on it?
Let's do it. Okay. Gas station, supermart, food court, coffee shop, bus stop, burrito supreme. Penny stocks, trust funds, checkpoints, bailouts, overdraft fees. Smokestacks, minivans, border fence, tax shelters, nuclear debris, valleys of silicon, islands of plastic, burning river pipelines, food desert, landmine, jumbo tanks, fracking, quake, the carcinogenic republic of acid, rain, foggy bottom, the World Bank, the dying forest, the falling trees, the sky depletes over the rising sea as the horizon greets mass extinction.
Mass extinction.
Mass extinction.
So, tell me about the poem.
Well, the sky, the sea, and everything in between, those are a series of poems that take place throughout the book. And there's actually a poem called The Rich where I say the sky, the sea, and everything in between, one heart that beats and the time. Anyways, that's the poem, but there's a reference to that. So I took the concept of the sky, the sea, and everything between, and I spread them out throughout. So everything between was, there's the sky, right, which is this war, and then there's the sea, which is our just collective absurdity and our collective participation in this thing that's destroying the planet. That's what the sea's about, right? The sky is not so much that. The sky is about the rich, and they're the ones that set the stage, and we're victims of them, right? But then the sea is more about well, yes, but also this, right? And then everything between is just our stupid death march into the sea. So that's why it's in between the sky and the sea.
I get it.
Yeah.
Do you believe that social and environmentally just change is possible? And after we're done exploring that, I'd love our listeners to hear Party Hymn. But yeah, sure. Do you believe that change is possible?
I do, but not under these conditions.
Yeah.
I do, but not while you have Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and Richard Branson and all these people running a space race. I do believe that, but not while you have the largest prison system in the world in our country, but even a global economy where I don't believe that these things are possible in a situation where I believe the Philippines is the world's largest exporter of rice and Thailand's the largest importer of rice, or maybe it's reversed, but you have the situation where that's going on, and the company making the most money off that is Cargill, based in San Francisco. Well, since the agricultural revolution, people living in the Philippines, people living in Thailand knew how to grow rice. That's a food staple, whatever. So it's not like Cargill taught them how to eat rice or taught them they liked rice. That's not what happened. Mexico. The country of Mexico is the world's second largest importer of rice. So under those conditions, no, I don't believe change is possible under these conditions. But if you eliminate capitalism, if you eliminate this exploitation, you eliminate this middleman who's actually the overlord, you eliminate that, then there's the possibility we can change these things. There's the possibility that we can restructure things in a way where things can be just and where we're not using technologies to destroy the earth, and we turn to different technologies because it's not about selling things anymore. It's about meeting the practical needs of people in the world. And when we do that, when we turn it into, if we have an economy based on the meeting of practical needs and the meeting of material needs, as opposed to selling people things and people buying things, then we're in a different position.
How people listening might say, well, that sounds really good, Matt, but how do we actually make that happen?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's a big question, and you should do your part whether it means, getting a different car. You should do all those things, sure. Why not? But that's not what we need to do. We need to, like you get a Prius or you get an electric car or you whatever, and you're just sporting, well, if you get a Tesla, you're just sporting Elon Musk. So on the one hand, you're doing that, but you're just making this guy more powerful to mine the world of for lithium and for whatever else he's looking for in the ground. So that's not a good solution. But you should do your part, recycle, whatever. You should do that. You should do that. You should do that and say you should brush your teeth. You should wash your clothes. You should do these things. But the other thing is, we got to fight these oil corporations, these giant oil corporations. We got to fight against the world, at the very least, the world's largest polluters. At the very least, the banks that back them, right? So, like, raising awareness at this point in time, just getting more people angry about this, getting more people angry about the crimes of Exxon, getting more people angry at the crimes of Chevron, at the crimes of British Petroleum, at the crimes of these things that are yes, destroying the environment for everybody, but actually actively out there, causing death in the places they drill, causing, all over the world. And so, like, that is what we need to do at this point in time so that we can really do something. We need to build the army of people that are angry about these things before we can really do something.
And what about disconnecting the political system from that? Because it seems that they're one and the same.
Well, we got to get people angry at the political system as well. And again, it's global. We're not talking just about, like, somebody here in this country. I mean, I always have this attitude, like, think local and think global, act local. I mean, yes, but in your local thinking, what you should do is find people in your neighborhood to get mad about global issues. I mean, that's what you should do. Yes, I mean, if you're just gonna try and, like, well, I'm gonna act globally, well, how are you gonna do that? But yes, act local, but about global. Act local about the global.
Nice. You want to share Party Hymn?
Party Hymn, yeah. Here we go. Some say it begins from within. Some say it has already begun. Some say wait upon conditions. Some say inevitable. Some say impossible. Some say it is a process, not an event. Some carry signs. Some sign petitions. Some block politicians. Some back politicians. Some become politicians. And I have seen academics, metaphysics swallow reality, then spit back a peer-reviewed tenure-track salary. And I have seen the organizers of labor embrace the parties of capital. And I have seen age-old cowardice, dishonesty, careerism parade as groundbreakingly new. And I have seen courage burst into spontaneous flame. And I have seen fear in the pig's eye. And I've seen rebellions light the night sky, then fade to smoke. Some speak against the need for political education. Some speak against the need for structure and party discipline. But I know, without theory, history does not move. And I know that once the line is set, organization is key. That there are decades for the taking to be wrenched from weeks, that we cannot wait upon the impossible, that none can do it alone, that every day we must work to make victory inevitable. If we wish to see revolution in our lifetimes, we must organize.
Perfect poem to lead in from that conversation.
Yeah.
You have been a guest lecturer of over 100 colleges, I think it is, right? And your book is being assigned, your Mowing Leaves of Grass. I'm not sure about City on the Second Floor yet.
Not yet.
Not yet, but it is coming.
It's coming.
Has been assigned as required reading. What are you speaking to in your lectures, and in what type of class are you actually seeing your book assigned? Because it's not like it's the poetry class, it's something much more even than that. Well,
at this point in time, it's ethnic studies and history classes, and that's for Mowing Leaves of Grass. City on the Second Floor just got picked up. It just got picked up. San Diego State, I think they just bought 30 copies.
Nice.
So we'll see how that goes. CSUN, I've been talking to people over at Cal State Northridge. Some people are already agreeing to sign it because they read and they love it, and so that's going to be interesting too. See how that goes. But right now, Mowing Leaves of Grass is taught at over a dozen universities, including Berkeley, including Madison, and a bunch of other places. And in good places too, like Mission College and and all these other places where people are at. But they Mowing leaves of grass is taught in ethnic studies classes for the most part, and in history classes. And in many ways, I like that. I do like that because Mowing Leaves of Grass very much is a history book. It is a book about a demographic shift. It is a book about the rise of these kind of Trumpian politics, which, are the politics of the Southwest. They're really the politics of the state of Arizona, for the most part, or portions of Orange County or portions of Texas. These really anti-Mexican type politics that really spread nationwide in a way that used to be a way to get elected in Arizona. It used to be a way to get elected in parts of California. It used to be ways to get elected in Texas and in just different parts of this part of the country where the Mexican-American War took place. That's what it's been. But now it's a way to get elected in Virginia. It's a way to get elected in South Carolina. It's a way to get elected throughout the entire country. And that's new. And that really began in the 90s with Prop 27, with all these different things that are going on. But again, it began in this area of the country. But then people started taking a national eye on it. People like Pat Buchanan and later Samuel Huntington, and then later popularized all these politics by Ann Coulter in her book Adios America. And if you read Adios America and portions of Adios America, Donald Trump's campaign is directly lifted out of Adios America. It's directly lifted out of Ann Coulter's book that came out just before he began to run. And if you look at Donald Trump's history as a racist, it's long and deep, but it's not particularly anti-Mexican. If you look at how he ran his campaign, Mexico was the centerpiece of it. Yeah. Mexico will pay. We'll build a wall. The Mexicans don't like me. Mexico's sending drug dealers and rapists. All these really horrific things being said. And that was the center of his campaign. And he doesn't have a long history of that. So that comes from a certain set of politics that have been developing. And that's what Mowing Leaves of Grass is about. Mowing Leaves of Grass is addressing all that, and in many ways captured all that in a country that is hell-bent on not expressing that obvious truth, in burying that obvious truth. So when we talk about Donald Trump as saying Mexico sent drug rapists, the initial kick by most intellectuals is to say America's always been anti-immigrant. Let's look at the Know-Nothing Party of the 1800s. Look at Ellis Island. Look at this. Look at this. Look what happened to Greeks. Look what happened to Italians. Look what happened to this. And these things are all true. They're all true, and I'm not diminishing them at all. They're all true. They all happened. You look at New Orleans, there was a lynching of Italians, which was one of the largest lynchings in American history. I think it might even be the first or second. But that happened. That's not a lie. However, that's a different history. Ellis Island and Rio Grande are not the same thing. It's a different history. The other thing is they look at Donald Trump, that's really racist. Well, America's long been a racist country. Let's look at Jim Crow in the Black Belt South and slavery and all these things like that. Again, that's profoundly true and still true to this day, and there's still so many different branches of how that affects the country as a whole. But again, that's also a different history.
Yeah.
This refusal to look at the southern border and the politics that emerge out of it is something that's going on in American society because there's a refusal to acknowledge the presence of these people and the growing presence of these people. Yeah. And you find that because we are as Latinos, as particularly Mexicans, the most underrepresented group of people in academia, in film media, in television, on radio, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You go down the line. We are the far and away most underrepresented group of people given our numbers in this country. And that is something that I'm just generally trying to combat. That's something Flower Song Press is combating. That's something with a lot of the people that I work with combat. That's something that on the station, on KPFK, Lalo Alvarez, he's done enormous work to combat. So that's something that a lot of us are in the fight against, that underrepresentation, that bearing of our voices. We're very much passionate about that. And Mowing Leaves of Grass is, if I do say so myself, the quintessential poetry collection addressing that issue.
So everyone listening, it is your duty to go get this book. Do you have any advice for other artists and how to use their words in a powerful, meaningful way?
Well, okay, here's the thing. If you want to be a writer, write about things that matter and write well. If you do that, you'll be one of the greatest writers to ever walk the face of the earth, because that's all writing is. Now, what you're going to do to need to do that is you need to develop a style. You need to turn that style into discipline. Then you need to turn that discipline into a standard of excellence that you hold yourself to every time out. And once you do that, you will be the world's leading expert as to why you are excellent. Move the production of your genius from your subconscious mind to your conscious mind. Become the world's leading expert as to why you are brilliant. Why you are brilliant can be a mystery to the audience, but it should never be a mystery to you. So you do that, go out there, be prolific, write about things that matter, fight the good fight, and you can do it. I believe in you. I believe in you. And who am I? I'm the best political poet in America, because Greg Powell said so.
Damn right. So how do people find you on social media and follow your work?
So I'm on Facebook, but I always max out of friends. And I'm on Instagram, and that's about my age. I'm 40 years old, so I know how to use Facebook really well. Kind of know how to use Instagram, and I'm both simultaneously too young and too old for Twitter. I'm saying? I've seen people that are older and established really use Twitter well, and I've seen young people use Twitter well, but I've never seen anyone in my own age range and my career level use Twitter well, so I don't know how to do it. And then, and I'm way too old for TikTok and all these other things. I'm too old. I mean, I encourage people to do it and do whatever they're doing on there and do it well, but I don't know how to do that. So
we just look up Matt Sedillo.
Look up Matt Sedillo on Instagram or Facebook. I'm getting ready to dump a bunch of people, and you can follow me though. They have that follow option now, so you can do that.
That's great. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for being in the studio with us. This is the first time we've been back in the studio since the pandemic started, and it's a blessing to have you be that guest here, our guest lecturer at the KPFK.
KPFK guest lecturer. I love it.
Thank you, Matt, for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to our guest, Matt Sedillo, poet and writer in residence at Rearte, and thank you to our listeners for joining us. This has been Poetry and Politics, sitting on the second floor. Please connect with us on social media at EcoJustice Radio, SoCal 350, and Adventures in Waste. If you like what you heard and you want others to be informed, well, you know what to do. Subscribe to our podcast, share the episodes, get that information out there, and share that important message of our guests. You have been listening to EcoJustice Radio, a project of SoCal 350 Climate Action. The show can be found at all major podcast apps and at ecojusticeradio.org. Created by Mark and JP Morris, executive producer Jack Ite, producer and co-host Jessica Aldridge, co-host Carrie Kim, and engineer and original music by Blake Quake Beats. And until next time, remember, the power is yours.